We have some breaking news for you guys. I'm here with our co-host Jay Scott. Elon is pretty pissed right now. Let's see. I got this tweet. We just got word of this. Elon saying, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know what you did was wrong. You know it." Jay, what is going on? This bill just get through, and why is Elon so pissed?
Civil war, in the MAGA community right now, that's kind of what, it feels like. There's a lot of division happening in the MAGA camp, which I actually agree is healthy to an extent, because it does show at least some people in the Republican Party are willing to hold folks accountable. Now, whether or not Elon is doing that and criticizing it for the right reasons, I don't know. But what I do know is Trump just made a huge spectacle about having Elon in the administration to cut inefficient spending. Elon went and found a bunch of fraud, a bunch of bad stuff. And instead of them actually using that information to solidify some of the cuts, it seems like they're just doing a repeat of what was happened before, while maybe shifting, some money around. But the budget is still pretty much the same size as it was when Biden was in office. But, and USAID is a perfect example. They're taking the money they would have given to USAID and they're giving it to the State Department. So they're still going to be doing all the same things that they were doing with USAID. It's just now more centralized, and it's all running through the State Department instead of giving the illusion of separation between this non-governmental agency and official U.S. foreign policy. So, I think what's happening here is healthy, because I don't generally see this kind of pushback, unfortunately, from the Democratic side. When Joe Biden is, passing his big priorities, there's very little criticism of him from within the Democratic ranks. Any criticism he gets isn't even coming from AOC anymore. She went out of her way to not criticize him while he was in office. And, the only criticism you'll get is some of the supporters at the grassroots level who really do want the right thing. They're criticizing Biden for not doing what's right, but you don't see any of that criticism coming from leadership. And that's one of the big differences between, the Republican and Democrat parties right now, unfortunately.
Okay, so here's the bill that went through the House. It was passed, but at least they're talking about it. Let's hear what's going on here as the Senate is considering the same bill, this overspending bill.
Have you identified any areas to cut?
Well, exactly like Rick Scott talked about, you go line by line. And again, I've laid out all the variances of how much we're spending today that exceeds 2019 plussed up for population growth and inflation. So you literally have to go through a couple thousand lines of the federal budget, probably hundreds of lines beneath each one of those lines. You have to take the time and do it. Doe shows how to do it. Contract by contract, line by line. Rick Scott did that as governor of Florida. He'd be great on a budget review panel. I proposed that. So again, this would be not an across the board as some basic percentage, but an across the board forensic audit of all government spending. You have to do it. We didn't do the work. We did it the same old way. We exempted most spending, looked at a couple of programs, tweaked them, tried to get a CBO score, talked about what seemed to be a big number, but a number that is completely inadequate. It doesn't meet the moment. Again, $22 trillion, and that's on the low side, Maria. You've got interest rate risk. That CBO estimate assumes we're going to increase taxes by about $4 trillion. Now, we can argue over, okay, if you increase taxes, they probably wouldn't get that amount. You still have to account for that $4 trillion if you don't increase taxes. So, again, we are facing a moment here where we've had an unprecedented level of spending increase from 2019, 58% to over $7 trillion. And it's just, we should have returned to pre-pandemic level spending in 2021. Joe Biden didn't do that. He averaged $1.9 trillion worth of the deficits. Obama in his last 4 years averaged $550 billion. I mean, that is, again, you have to put all these numbers. I'm working on a report right now, doing all the work. Hope to have a complete the 2025 budget reconciliation, facts and figures. I hope to hold a hearing within the next couple of weeks, certainly before we take any votes on this.
I'm actually extremely surprised that, Ron Johnson just mentioned, Obama's numbers, because that's one point I was about to mention. Conservatives love to say how they're the fiscally, responsible party. And don't take my word for this because it's going to sound crazy. Just go back and look at it yourself. Every single Republican president we've had since Ronald Reagan has exploded the deficit. And every single Democratic president has left the deficit at a lower point than when they came into the office. And the deficit is how much more we spend than we take in every year. So if you want to look at the bottom line, are we spending more than we're taking in? Democrats are actually more fiscally responsible than Republicans. So I'm surprised Ron Johnson mentioned that, but it goes to show you he's doing his best to be principled on this issue. And I think it's because Ron Johnson actually has an appreciation for what an existential threat to America the budget issue is. And most of us can't really visualize it in our everyday lives, because the entire time I've been alive, you've been alive, our parents have been alive, America has had the world reserve currency and we've been the dominant force. What we're doing with this budget crisis is accelerating the decline of the dollar as the world reserve currency, which will cause inflation to go absolutely insane. What we've seen so far is nothing compared to what it would be when we lose the world reserve currency if we don't find a way to balance this budget. Now, the part he's leaving out, Matt, is the military is a sunk cost. It does not provide any benefit here. It is the absolute worst way to spend our money. Yet it's a huge chunk of our budget, arguably the biggest once you account for discretionary and non-discretionary spending. And we're not going to get that money back. Like at least if we're spending money on infrastructure, on healthcare, this has a return on investment. All this money we're spending on the military industrial complex is bullshit, man. And now Trump wants to build a golden dome for another nearly $200 billion as he's trying to save money with Doge. I mean, all we're doing is we're enriching the pockets of the people who donate to Republican and Democratic parties. Two factions, one party. That's what we have.
The American imperialism, Western military machine, Israel-US war machine, petrodollar machine. It's a sinking ship. It's sinking. And as we know about all empires before us, they always go out kicking and screaming.